Well, welcome to the WoodsEdge Podcast. My name is Dave Ray, and we are starting a brand new season this week. This is a season that is all about the consecrated life. So we're spending these 6 weeks as a church going through 5 characteristics of a consecrated heart. Well, what does that look like to live it out? That's what we're going to be talking about for the next 6 weeks. And so this week we are joined by our pastor, Jeff Wells, and by our missions pastor, John Carswell. Great to have both of you guys here. If there's anybody on staff that is going to give Jeff a hard time, it's John, right?
Right. Maybe. No, it would be John. Well, I'll dish it right back.
He's been very gracious to me.
Well, let's talk first about just the idea of consecration, because this is not one that kind of comes up in our everyday life, but it's a biblical idea. And Jeff, when we're talking about consecration, what do we mean when God asks his people to consecrate themselves? What is he asking them to do?
He is asking them to prepare themselves, to ready themselves, to dedicate themselves, to be ready to respond to his call.
The verse that is kind of guiding our 6 weeks here is Joshua 3:5. Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. So this is when the people of Israel are about to cross the Jordan into the promised land. So God is consecrating them for something. Is that a common pattern that we see, that you're being consecrated for a specific purpose?
Yes and no, Dave. I'd say, no in the sense that, that was a very special moment for Israel. So not exactly like that, but does God want us to ready ourselves and be prepared for things? No question. He wants us, in some ways, always to be alert, always to be prepared. In fact, that is a repeated statement of Jesus when he tells his disciples and us about his return, be ready. Be alert, be watching, be ready. So there is a sense that he wants us always to have that mindset. But certainly if there are special occasions, special events, we should be ready.
Well, one of the things we are talking about is that vision that we state often, that we want to see Houston become a city of God. Jeff, can you take us through a little bit about how we arrived there, and what was it about that statement that really captured your heart as a pastor and the heart of our congregation?
Yes, glad to, Dave. I don't remember all the details, Dave, but I do remember in the earlier years of WoodsEdge, maybe the first 20 years or so, there's probably more of a focus on our community. We live in the Woodlands area. We used to be in the Woodlands. Now we're on the outside of the Woodlands. So we thought in terms of the Woodlands area and the surrounding communities. But it must have been sometime about 2015 that we shifted our whole perspective to let's focus on Houston and not just our own community, the bigger city that we are part of. And we're not technically in the borders of Houston, but we're part of Greater Houston. We are fans of the Houston Astros and the Houston sports teams and read the Houston Chronicle. We read a city newspaper. So this is our city. The city is important to God. The city in the New Testament. That Paul largely focused on reaching the major cities, beginning with Jerusalem. And from there, the gospel radiated out so that God has a city on his heart. And it just seemed to fit my heart, fit us, that God wants us to focus not on growing our church, but on reaching our city.
Yeah.
So that the focus became, not about us growing or us anything, but upon reaching a city for the kingdom of God.
Yeah. For me, one of the things that came to mind was in the book of Jeremiah writes a letter to all the exiles. Right. And one of the things he says to the exiles is, seek the peace and prosperity of the city where God has sent you.
Yes.
Pray for it, because if it prospers, you'll prosper. And so, John, I want to go to you, because it can be really easy for us as believers to be pretty inwardly focused about ourselves and our own spiritual life, or even about our own little community. But really, God's call to us is more civic-minded. It's more outward. How should Christians feel about the communities where they live?
Yeah, certainly your discipleship will start inwardly, but as you become a Christ follower, Jeff has described this, it's just an outflow, right? And I think ultimately it's going to go around the world. But Jeff is demonstrating through the history of our church a natural progression of, well, we're very community focused. We're probably even church focused, then community focused. But at some point, we have to focus on the larger community. You guys have already said it. The Bible talks about it. Even I was thinking about in Jonah, that city is called a great city. Nineveh is called a great city, indicating how important it is to God, even though it wasn't a very righteous city. And so as Christ followers, we really generalize people in two categories: our brothers and sisters in faith and our sense of urgency. And so Jeff has led a church to become pretty influential. And so we have a responsibility not only to carry that out, but I think as Jeff's demonstrating, to partner with other churches, other Christian leaders, and reach the city for God.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's a lot of things that could mean, reaching the city for God, Houston becoming a city of God. What do we have in mind, Jeff, when we say that we want Houston to be a city of God?
We want the Spirit of God to fall upon our city, all the churches in our city, all the believers in our city, in such a way that there is a radical transformation, people coming to Christ left and right at an accelerated pace, lukewarm believers falling afresh in love with Jesus, and a whole variety of things happening to transform the culture, such as the divorce rate go way down, or drug addiction go way down, or even in our day and age, anxiety among the everyday person go way down, so that there is such a spiritual upheaval, such a transformation that people notice there's something going on in Houston. I mean, God seems to be especially working in Houston. What's going on there? It's like Houston is a city of God. So what we mean is spiritual revival, spiritual transformation, spiritual awakening, where all kinds of people are falling in love with Jesus, and the culture begins to change. So I don't primarily think of churches growing.
Right.
I think of society changing, culture changing. And it seems to me, Dave, in my lifetime of now 71 years, that our culture has been on a pretty steady decline in just about every measure that you could measure. Family breakdown, or crime, or violence, or drug use. That there's not been an upward climb, but a downward descent. And what if that was reversed in a city, in a great city, one of the great cities in America and in the world?
Yeah.
That would be exciting.
Do we have any precedent for something like this happening?
Yes, we do. We have had entire countries or regions have that kind of a spiritual transformation, such as an awakening. It's called the Great Awakening in the United States during the time of John Wesley, George Whitefield, Jonathan Edwards in the 1700s. And then there was another big movement in America. That was in America and in Britain. Another big one was the Second Great Awakening about a century later in the 1800s. But we can also pinpoint it more specifically to 1859 in New York City. This man started leading a prayer meeting that spread wildly through the city, and businessmen, tens of thousands of businessmen would devote their lunch hours to praying together, and it brought transformation. So there have been times in history, we could name some others, in which areas have experienced spiritual revival and transformation. And I think most serious Christians, Dave, read about these events or hear about these events, and we think, man, I want to experience that. You know, a lot of us would think, I don't want to just settle for reading about revivals elsewhere and at other times. But why not here? Why not now? Why not with us? And so I've been praying for revival since I got back to Houston in 1989. I assume it was shortly after that. Certainly the last several decades, I have been praying for revival in Houston. Now I'm attaching with that the language, we want Houston to be a city of God. By the way, Dave, I should just mention, maybe you're going to bring this up. I do feel some tension in talking about the city because it doesn't stop there. You know, Jesus said, go into all the world, make disciples of all men, you know, beginning in Jerusalem, then to Judea and Samaria, the neighboring the areas, and then to the ends of the earth. So we don't just stop at Houston.
Yeah.
We do think globally. We want to reach people all over. But we feel like our specific calling begins with our own city, and from there it goes further.
Well, that seems on the surface to me to be an immense mission for Houston, a city of how many million people?
7 million.
To become a city of God.
7+ million. Yeah.
John, that feels too big for any one person or any one church.
Yeah.
So how does an individual or an individual church, how do we engage with something that broad, that big?
Yeah, it is overwhelming when you start thinking about what it could be. First, and we don't just say this, first it does begin with prayer.
Yeah.
Jeff, as you know, leads great in this, but we're picking up from him, and really as a missions team trying to attach prayer to everything that we do in a real heartfelt way. That's number one. Seeking where a little bit of the Henry Blackaby, where's God working, and meet him there as well. But here, let me cast a vision of what we want to see or what we kind of think is our part. We have a great church. We have a great mission staff. The church is extremely generous with the budget for our missions team. It's incredible. But that is a drop in the bucket when you even compare that to what even the WoodsEdge believers could accomplish as they are the church scattered. We gather on Sunday. We're scattered every other day. And so I often will talk to my team and I'll say, let me give you a story, a hypothetical story of a wealthy businessman who God has blessed. He makes a lot of money and he's on his way to an important business meeting to make money. But he knows his life belongs to Jesus. God's blessed him with money. And so he's hurrying, he's late for an important meeting, and he sees a Muslim woman broken down on the side of the road with 2 kids. He's late. Most of us would just keep on going. He pulls over because he knows, like, that's the most important. That's how Christ has created him. So he pulls over. This woman's probably scared anyway. He helps her. He prays with her. And so just take that and for WoodsEdge, just take that and multiply it by 5,000 and multiply it by every hour of the day. And imagine the transformation that could create. And so for us, that's what we want. We want to mobilize every man, woman, child, not just for things that we program, but for them to live what we call an incarnational life.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, but what we do is we partner with partners and we program things where they can get involved, and then we just expect and want the Holy Spirit to take it from there, and it becomes something much more powerful than just something that we program.
Well, I want to go back to what you said about look at where God is working. That's the Henry Blackaby experiencing God. Look at where God is working and join him. Where do you see God working in our city right now?
All kinds of ways. It's interesting that we're having this conversation now. We invest a lot in children at risk and women at risk in our city. And one of those areas is foster children and then children that have aged out of the foster system. There's a staggering statistic among the foster care system. 80% of kids that are in the foster system, once they age out, 80% of them either wind up homeless, in prison, or dead.
Wow. Within how much time?
Within 3 years.
Within 3 years.
Within 3 years.
So not just in general.
Yeah.
So if you make it 5 years, it's even higher.
That's right.
But within 3 years, that's a staggering statistic.
Wow.
If we address that issue, we start to change the homeless ministry and the prison ministry, right? So there is some really great things happening in this area. We partner with several of them, I can mention them, that are addressing it while they're in the system, the fostering system, which is very challenging. And then those that are actually addressing when they age out. When they age out, they're on their own. Well, what do they do? How do they get a job? How do they get an education? And I just heard a phenomenal story today, a 24-year-old lady that was in the foster system, just graduated from A&M, and just literally delivered the gospel because through a camp of a Love Fosters Hope, one of the organizations we partner with, is where she met Jesus and had hope. So there's just story after story right now. Of where that's just one area. We could go on, but that's one area that I see that's tremendously important, and I think God's moving in this area.
Jeff, what would you want the average person at WoodsEdge to do to accomplish this mission or to be a part of this mission?
Well, when I think about us accomplishing the mission, Dave, I think a couple of things. I think in one way that's a goal, but it is also a prayer because our goal is so big, as you pointed out, that to see revival in a city. Well, we know from the Bible that we don't just make revival happen because through our diligent work and planning. Mm-hmm. Not to say that diligent work or planning will not be needed or not be part of it, but we always see in the Bible and in history that ultimately God chooses to send revival supernaturally, sovereignly. So there is this tension between, yes, we're aiming for it, we're going for it, we're doing anything we can for it, but we realize this is completely supernatural, that God has to sovereignly pour out His Holy Spirit upon our city in a special way. So, Dave, to answer your question, I'd say I would want every person at WoodsEdge to own this vision because we believe it's the vision God has given us as a church. Not the vision He's given me as the pastor or the elders or our staff team, but us as a church, which is all the people. So this is our vision. I'd want everybody at WoodsEdge to own it. Say, yeah, that's our vision. And then, in light of owning it, to first pray. Just, it's part of my daily prayer, Dave, that God would pour revival on Houston, that Houston would become a city of God. And we talk about it a good bit, and people all over WoodsEdge know this vision. It is written across walls in various places on our campus. We want more, but we want it to begin with praying that God would bring revival and make Houston a city of God. If I could just add, Dave, also, I do believe there's some very specific things for all of us to do that ultimately boil down to all of us individually need to love Jesus and walk with God and the outflow of that. And He will have some of us, go back to John's point about foster care. There's a number of people at WoodsEdge who are involved directly with foster care ministry. In fact, I know of 3 ministries that were birthed by people at WoodsEdge involving foster care system. One of them beginning with little children all through the foster care system, and then 2 more with those folks who age out and who are now at risk for falling into one of those 3 categories, homeless, jail, or dead. So there's a lot of people that will be specifically called in that critical area, but we just want everybody to fulfill the ministry they've called because there are other people who are called a completely different ministry that is also Christ-honoring and vital and city-transforming eventually.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Dave, I believe I've got some responsibilities as a pastor. And I think my calling is mainly around helping pastors to come together for revival in the city of Houston. We also see with revival not only is prayer a crucial element, widespread prayer, but also the unity of pastors in a city. Consistently, we see that around the world in movements transforming cities. And so I feel like I've got a role in that. I'm a pastor, so I want to contribute to that. And one of the things that I do is to try to encourage unity of pastors across our city. For example, there is an organization that I serve on the board. It's called Houston Church Planting Network. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we together try to train church planters and help foster an attitude where church planters are sent out throughout Houston to plant new churches, because we know that the planting of new churches is critical to spreading the kingdom, advancing the kingdom in an area. Well, I didn't start this ministry, but I am very involved with it. WoodsEdge is very involved with it. We give sacrificially to it. And it turns out that Houston is the only city in the United States that has a large gathering of believers throughout the city of all stripes and flavors and denominations that are together working to reach their city for Christ. And other cities have come to Houston and said, what are y'all doing here? How can we learn? What can we do here? So that's been going on for about 15 years, I'd say. And that's just another step of trying to unite pastors, unite churches that we don't lead, but we are part of. Yeah. And we're all in. Yeah. And we just want to see that kind of mindset of unity, collaboration, praying together, spread and go viral throughout Houston.
What I love about that is that it really exemplifies, I think, the culture that we're looking for. You specifically asking, okay, well, who do I know? Where's my sphere of influence? Right. What are the things that I'm pretty good at, and how can I leverage that for the sake of the vision? And so, John, thinking about the average person in our church, how does that person move from recognizing some things, being bought into the vision, to actually taking action?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's first getting serious about it. Just this, there's sometimes there's a hump to get over of, I've been in church my whole life, and so I need to go consistently and check the box to, hey, I'm gonna really buy in to who Jesus is. Our society really tries to distract us from this, but once it's there, we have a saying on the missions team that we want to get people from the seats to the streets. And then we also break that down to say, hey, if someone at WoodsEdge has never done really anything, they just come to church, but they haven't served outside the walls, do something, do a few things, find out maybe what your gifting is. First time I signed up for something, I signed up to take care of 3-year-olds, and it didn't work out well. Okay, shocked I have kids, but it worked out. But we bounced around and found out what did, give us energy. Yeah. Then if you've done a few things, find your place consistently. And then if you do something consistently, constantly find a place of that challenges your comfort zone. And if you keep doing that, you keep growing. And what you were scared of, pretty soon you get comfortable with it. Now you need to go forward. Pretty soon, pretty soon you will look up. If you kind of reading your Bible, spending time with Jesus, and putting it to action, like I kind of just described, you will find yourself serving in some areas that a couple of years ago you found incredibly uncomfortable and tried to avoid. And then you start to think about. Jesus said, he talks about you came and saw me in the prison, and you fed me, and that kind of analogy that he gives. Pretty soon you'll find yourself in the trenches doing that. And people out there who are seen, who are loved, that don't normally feel that, their life has changed. And then you're spurred on. By that time, it's just so much motivation. You just like, I need to go do that again. So it's like anything in discipleship. It's just baby steps, right? If you haven't done something, sign up to do something. Find out what works and just keep pushing forward. And I mean, don't sign up for your first thing. Don't sign up for a trip to some country that you can't pronounce. Take your steps, walk in it.
Well, you, John, have been in all sorts of places that would probably make most of us pretty uncomfortable. You seem to thrive in those kind of situations. For the person that feels like that feels scary to me, or that feels dangerous, or even that just feels uncomfortable, I'm not sure if I want to do that. What have you found to be the reward of stepping into those places and serving in that way?
Oh, me personally, the reward of stepping in places that are uncomfortable. First off, it's not nearly what I dreamed up in my head. It's not nearly as uncomfortable as I thought it was, because those are thoughts that are really about me. And then you get there and you're like, okay, this is not nearly as bad as I thought. Two, the reward of people who are not normally served, being seen, being loved. Again, you caught me at a time where I just went to an event to hear some stories about foster care. And there are so many stories of kids who showed up at something, went to a camp, didn't want to be there, too cool to be there. They were loved, and their whole perspective, the kids were literally just crying at the end and I love you and hugging people. And when you see their lives transformed, you're like, I got to come back and do this again and again. So again, it's like, this is a terrible analogy, but it's like going to that party. Like you didn't want to go to that party. You were too busy to go, but you went to the party and it's the best party you ever went to. And you're like, I almost missed it. Like multiply that times 10. Every time I've had someone engaged, that's what the response has been. It's so much better than I thought. Yeah.
And where do you feel like, I mean, we're already engaged in a lot of different areas, but where do you feel like our vision on behalf of our city needs to expand?
Really, where all the needs are. I mean, we are involved in some key areas. We're women and children at risk, freedom ministries, which includes a lot of prison ministry or drug addiction and things like that. We do a lot of outreach, evangelism, discipleship. I mean, we could still expand in those places a ton. I'll tell you one area that's difficult to deal with is the sex trafficking. Large cities like Houston are kind of a hotbed for that darkness. And it's a very difficult ministry to engage into. And so that's an area that needs a lot of prayer, Jeff, in that particular. Houston's there's other cities around the world that are really tough. That's one that I spend a lot of time thinking about. How do we engage that one in a more fruitful way? But right now, we do a lot. And I'm so thrilled. Our mobilization of our WoodsEdgers has just gone through the roof in the last 2 years. And we have plenty of places to expand everywhere. But that's kind of how I would summarize.
Dave, could I jump in on that question?
Please.
When I think of the question, a couple of thoughts come to mind. One is, I think that Houston is widely considered the most international city in the United States. So 1 out of 4 people living in Houston were born in a foreign country, which is incredible. And we know there's so many Hispanics here. There are more Hispanics here than there are Anglos. But it's not just that. There are people from all over the world in Houston, partly because we're an energy capital, we're a medical center. But Houston is very diverse. And so one answer to that is we certainly want to be attentive. And we are. There's some great ministry going on in Houston, and we are part of that. But that would be one huge area, because someone who comes as a refugee or as looking for a new life from a tough part of the world, they're more needy, they're more open to the gospel. Those folks are often very receptive to the gospel. And so we just want to seize the opportunity that God has given us. But I'd also say this, Dave. I'd say a second thought that I have about your question is that really every area of society, not just the great needs, but we think of the business world. Yeah. We think of the medical world. We think of schools and little children, and just every sector of society. If we divided society into sectors or domains, we just want Christians living for Christ in every domain, every sector of society. So that's a couple of thoughts I have.
Yeah.
I also have a story, if there's might be time for it. John Bisagno was the pastor of First Baptist Houston for decades, and he became probably the most prominent pastor in the city, or certainly one of the two or three prominent pastors. John began pastoring First Baptist when I think it had 250 people in it, and by the end, it just thousands upon thousands, had this massive campus. And John was this great big man. He's physically large and full of life and joy, and just had an enormous influence on our city. Well, John died a few years ago. And in the last couple of years before John died, he began gathering some large church pastors from our city to his house to pray for revival in Houston. And I was one of the guys he called up, or one of the guys he invited. And I came. And I was just so struck by the heart of this older pastor who no longer was an active pastor, but loved his city and wanted and still longed for revival in the city of Houston. And this was on his heart. And he knew one church couldn't do it, but all the churches together might consecrate themselves, to prepare themselves for God to send a revival. And I remember not only his heart for it, Dave, but I remember him often saying, and it doesn't matter where it starts. That's not the point. It might start with a 7-year-old girl that nobody knows. And I think of your earlier question, what can any one person at WoodsEdge do? Well, we need to walk with Jesus and love Jesus, because who knows what God might do in a given moment or a given time to spark a revival. I also think this, Dave, that John Bisagno died without ever having seen it. And we don't know if and when God is going to bring a revival to Houston. But it happens in places around the globe at various times in history through various people. And why wouldn't we ask God for it with us?
Yeah.
What pastor couldn't make it to John's house that you got invited? Y'all can edit that out, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
He was the first alternate.
Yeah, first alternate.
All right. If I'm listening to this podcast and I want to step into that vision, embrace that vision, the thing I should do tomorrow is what, Jeff?
Begin praying and asking God to send revival in my heart. Let it begin in me. And let it move to my church, whatever church they're part of, and let it come to our city and then to the nations.
You've been listening to the first episode of our new season called The Consecrated Life. And over these next 5 episodes, we're looking at 5 marks of a consecrated heart and how that gets lived out practically in our lives. Be sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you want to know more about WoodsEdge, you can find us at woodsedge.org.